Welcome to the Hermitess podcast with Andrea Cox, the only plant-based astrology podcast focusing on Hermetic principles, cellular detoxification, and mystery teachings. Andrea's interviews include her celebrity clients, NBA ball players, musical composers, detoxification specialists, and world-renowned healers just like Andrea. Andrea is a model-turned-celebrity detox specialist, intuitive healer, and holistic wellness and life coach. You will find only authentic people interviewed on this podcast. Real recognizes real. Andrea prides herself on only inviting those who are uniquely creative.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hermitess podcast. Today, we have Doug Evans. Doug is an early pioneer in the natural food industry. In 2002, he co-founded Organic Avenue, one of the first exclusively raw, organic, and plant-based retail chains in the country. He then created and founded the first Juicero, the first, thank you, Doug, the first fresh farm to glass automatic cold press juicer with the mission of bringing more fresh produce to the home. Doug lives in the Mojave Desert at Wonder Valley Hot Springs. Oh my gosh, you're so lucky. Doug wrote the Sprout book in efforts to teach people about the power of sprouts and has written a transformative plan for sprouting in the affordable and accessible way. His mission in life is to help people learn how to grow and eat the most nutritious food on the planet, sprouts. I love this, Doug, and I love that you talk about sprouts because most people don't know that sprouts are a cancer preventative, right?
Yeah, and actually cancer treatment.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if we just jump right in there, Andrea, right? Number one, I look at sprouts as vegetables, and vegetables are food, and they're a living food, and they're the freshest food you could have because you're harvesting them on demand, right? So number one, sprouts are vegetables. Number two, sprouts are vitamins and minerals, and they contain the entire array of micronutrients, phytonutrients, polyphenols, bioflavonoids, prebiotics, probiotics, all amino acids to form proteins. So they're all in sprouts. So an insight that I got was that every benefit of the whole food plant-based diet, raw or cooked, can be achieved with force and with a multiplier through sprouts. Yeah. And number three, what you just talked about, sprouts being cancer preventive, sprouts are also medicine, right? So Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, but it's sprouts are the medicine. And there's been more than 2,500 peer-reviewed published papers on broccoli sprouts alone, because they're a glucosinolate that contains the precursor to sulforaphane, which has been tested for treating most chronic illnesses and many acute illnesses from cancer and heart disease and diabetes and autism and Alzheimer's. It's amazing that sprouts actually have that ability to either treat or prevent those chronic illnesses.
Yeah. And how did you get into this? Because I want to tell the people, I just realized literally today, I was like, so Doug was recommended by a client of mine to interview. And I looked at his page and I was like, oh my God, I love this guy. And then I was like, but he looks familiar. I met you over 2 decades ago when I was with Gil Jacobs, when I flew to New York from Ohio, my home state of Dayton, Ohio, to get healthy. I feel like Gil was the person that changed my life single-handedly in a 48-hour visit with him. And I remember us leaving his apartment. I'm pretty sure Organic Avenue, which was a place you started or you helped start, right? I'm pretty sure it was like a walking distance away, right? From his apartment.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was on second street.
Yeah. I remember saying like, oh my God, who is that? Who is that? And he was like, oh, that's Doug. And you gave us some juices that were already made in a cooler from, being cold pressed, or we bought a bunch of juices, and that day, that was my first time ever actually trying juice. And I've juiced every single day since. So you had so this is kind of odd for me because I just put two and two together like a few hours ago. I was like, oh my goodness. And you wouldn't have even recognized me then. I mean, I was one of those 6 meal a day, high protein eaters. And literally like that, I went raw vegan overnight and stayed raw for 11 years. So I feel honored and like just completely humbled to have you on here. How did you get into juicing and sprouting?
Yeah. So I got into sprouting before juicing over 25 years ago in New York City. I remember getting sprouts at the Union Square Farmers Market. And I remember juicing wheatgrass. So before I was vegan. And then in 1999, I met a woman named Denise Mari in New York. And we started Organic Avenue together because she had lost her sister and her mother to leukemia. I lost my aunt to diabetes and my uncle to heart disease and my mother to cancer, my father to heart disease. And my brother had 3 strokes and a heart attack. So I thought I was genetically cursed. And then I got tuned into plant-based kind of vibration. And in a 2-week period, I was consuming everything that I could. And I went from vegetarian to vegan to raw vegan and like so many things. And that was 23 years ago. Wow. So that was my journey. And then, what we started Organic Avenue because there was no real options. Nothing was really organic. Whole Foods hadn't really taken over New York City and other cities. No one was doing cold pressed juice. Like people were using the spinning juice, the centrifugal juicers. Mm-hmm. And what we learned was that the cold pressing was preserving enzymes and nutrition, and that we could prepare it and put it into glass bottles. So that's what got me into it. And then all of our friends in the community would come by and they wanted more. So we just started to produce juice for our immediate friends and our family. And if you remember where Gil was, there was a pretty emerging consciousness in the East Village, Lower East Side around plant-based.
Yeah.
And so I did Organic Avenue for 10 years. So I ran Organic Avenue for 10 years. And then I had a crazy idea, and we're going to talk about sprouts, but I'll just say I had the crazy idea for Juicero was to be able to take fresh produce the same way you make cold pressed juice, put it into a cheesecloth bag. So we would triple wash it, dice it, slice it, chop it, shred it, put it into cheesecloth. And then we had an outer barrier, an outer bag that had a spout on it. And then if you put that bag into the Juicero press, you wouldn't have to clean it. All the juice would come out the spout into it. So we were in the fresh cut produce
complaint, right? Everybody complains about cleaning the juicer. That's people's main complaint. So that's wow.
Yeah. So that business, Juicero, was probably 20 years ahead of its time. Mm-hmm. And so it was too early. So the investors, we sold thousands of machines, over 1 million servings in the first year. So it was really doing well, but not, the world wasn't ready for it. So after that, I went to Burning Man, and we're in my Burning Man yurt now. I moved to the desert, and I realized that not only was I in the Mojave Desert, right next to your friend Nicole, right in the high desert, but right, we were in a food desert. Like, holy cow, I'm in a food desert, and we had no access to Whole Foods, Air One, any of the specialty gourmet or even simple raw food options. Yeah. So the one night, as I'm soaking in the hot springs, looking at the stars and the galaxy and the Milky Way, I got this download that those were representative to me in my consciousness at that time. Those were sprouts. And that even though I had been eating sprouts for 25 years, and I'd been growing them, we used them on the menu at Organic Avenue, I grew them, I always treated them as a superfood or as a delicacy or as a garnish. And here was the test. Could sprouts become the staple of my diet? Could they become my primary source of calories? Could I live on sprouts? And basically, I went from sprouting alfalfa sprouts and mung bean sprouts to within 30 days, I was sprouting alfalfa, azuki, arugula, radish, clover, broccoli, chia, all sorts of lentils, all sorts of peas,
sunflower.
And sunflower. And within 1 cubic foot, I was growing more sprouts than I could eat in the course of a day. I'm talking about thousands of calories of sprouts, dozens of grams of protein, enormous amounts of soluble and insoluble fiber. Wow. And my mind was blown. And that's what got me into sprouting kind of full time 5 years ago.
Now, did you start, because I sprout in jars, just canning jars. I've also sprouted while traveling out of a hemp bag, but did you, and I got more into sprouting. I spent 3 months at Optimal Health Institute.
Yeah. I've been to OHI and
you live off sprouts. You load your plate up with sprouts and you sprinkle, seeds on it, and there you are. So I spent 3 months there about 6 years ago, and I loved it so much that I kept going back and volunteering. So I sprout. I have a couple of YouTube videos on sprouting on Andrea Cox TV, but I always use just canning jars. How, if I wanted, or if the people watching and listening wanted to sprout a lot of sprouts, like they wanted to live off sprouts, virtually like you, what would you suggest? Where would they start?
I mean, I think that in order for people to develop the microbiome that's attuned to sprouts, the flavor profile and the consciousness, I would suggest they start exactly where you are, using mason jars with cheesecloth and a rubber band, or now they make these special lids, that go on top. So the thing about sprouting is that it's really simple. Now, in my brain and my creative parts sees how it could be done better, right? But for now, I just want to say, start with a glass jar, and you don't even need a mason jar. If you're using a rubber band and cheesecloth, you could take a tomato sauce or pasta sauce jar, any jar will do. And you want to get high quality seeds, right? And a lot of people, when I say this, they balk over it, but I'm going to just say it from a food safety perspective. Bleach, like Clorox bleach, unscented, unsoaped, right? Bleach. If you soak the seeds in it for 5 minutes and then you rinse them twice, you will reduce 99.99% of any sort of bacteria, pathogen, fungus, mold that might be on the outside.
What happens? Yeah, because sometimes depending on what the humidity or whatever, mine get, either there's a gnat swarm or there's fungus. So how do we prevent that? Because I want to learn, because I would love to live off sprouts.
Yeah. So basically what you're seeing on there when the gnats come in the other, that is generally a result of surface level contamination. So on the seeds, which could be a week old or 6 months old or years old, there could be bacteria, fungus, etc. And so I wrote the book, right? I wrote the Sprout book for the purpose of taking the knowledge that I had accrued over the 25 years, documenting it, because there's nuance. But there's a whole chapter on safety and sanitization of the seeds. But you could use things like food grade hydrogen peroxide. Like in some health food stores, you could get 12% food grade hydrogen peroxide. You can use white vinegar, or you could use Clorox bleach. And there's other things, some are less effective. But if you take the seeds, you soak them in one of these sanitizing agents for like 5 minutes. Then you rinse them off. You'll barely have a trace of the prior part. But then you soak them in water for 5 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, depending on the seed and the variety. And that's all in the book. But let's just take broccoli seeds. You soak them for 5 to 8 hours. Okay. And then you rinse out you spill out the extra water. You fill it up with new water. You swirl it around. Then you spill out the water again. And then you leave the jar at a 45-degree angle or 30-degree angle so that the extra water will strain out.
Okay.
And then you do that twice a day, right? You rinse, drain.
3 or 4 days. Yeah, you have sprouts. So I actually use a dish dryer to kind of stick mine.
Yeah, the dish rack.
Yeah, and mine's always filled. I put sprouts on everything. And I really feel that sprouts are a real beautifying food too. And I like to juice sprouts too. So I'm sure you juice sprouts, right?
Of course. I mean, the thing about sprouts is that you had mentioned earlier that you just finished a water fast. Yeah. So it's very interesting. Sprouts, like the vegetable variety of sprouts, the radish, clover, broccoli, are such low calorie. And the fiber is so tender that you are getting soluble and insoluble fiber that's very bioavailable, that eating sprouts will create a fasting mimicking diet. So there's something between eating everything, doing a water fast. It's like consuming a lot of the sprouts. Now there are heavier sprouts like soybean sprouts or garbanzo bean sprouts or lentil sprouts that are higher concentrations of fat and higher concentrations of protein. What people don't know is that even chia and flax have ALA, medium chain fatty acids. And when you combine them with seaweed like nori, you're getting a complete fatty acid with both ALA and EPA DHA. So you get all three of them, combined. So, the idea about sprouts, and what I would say, if people are new to sprouting, people have been using alfalfa sprouts, through the hippy dippy trippy world for dozens of years. And I didn't invent sprouts. There would be no life on the planet if there weren't vegetables that seeded, sprouted, and grown, right? So sprouts have been around. It was the necessity of my circumstance that drove me to find sprouts as a solution for hunger, for preventing disease, right? For treating disease, as well as for supernourishment for high performance athletes and the like. So that's what it is. But I take no credit. Sprouts have been around before me. They'll be around after me. I just happen to tune in on that consciousness. So now when I look at it, there are things like chia and flax that are gelatinous, that you can just grow those in a terracotta planter, right? Almost like the chia pet with the crazy hair. You just wet the seeds, you apply them on the terracotta. Terracotta is like,
that would be me with the that would be me, the chia pet. I think it's because I do sprouts and everything. I really think we can reverse all of this without all the crap we're putting in our forehead and everything else. I think we can reverse things naturally with the way we eat. So when people grow in flats or trays, because I really suck at I tried to grow sunflower sprouts in a flat, and it proved itself to be like the most fungus experience of my life. How do you recommend they grow in a flat or a terracotta pot before I so rudely interrupt you? I'm so
okay. So the primary methods of sprouting are jars, are trays, flats, are like the hemp bags, or are terracotta as a clay based. So certain seeds like sunflower, I've done many videos on sprouting sunflower in a jar. Now, the interesting thing is people are familiar with seeing sunflowers tall, big, 7-foot, powerful flower that moves with the direction of the sun, right? But sunflower sprouts usually go up straight like a shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But you could sprout them in a jar and they end up becoming curly.
Yeah.
And so you could sprout them in a jar. If you want them to sprout them in a tray, they make sprouting mediums, which could be as simple as a 7th generation unbleached paper towel, where you wet the paper towel, you soak the seeds, you rinse them until they germinate. And then once the little white tail starts to shoot through the black seed, then you pour them out on the unbleached paper towel, or it could be coconut fiber, or it could be jute fiber, or it could be hemp fiber or soil, right? So they all work, and you lay them out evenly. Then you put another paper towel or cloth over them, and you spray mist, like with a spray bottle, water, so that they get wet. And you want to keep them wet a lot. And then as they germinate, they will raise that paper towel off of them. Wow. And then you want to keep them wet by misting them 2 to 3 times a day. And I like sprouts because you can grow sprouts without soil, without sunshine, without fertilizer, or without a sprouting medium in a jar in days, not weeks, months, or years, right? So that's like my part. But if someone wants to grow microgreens, and technically the sunflower will grow into a microgreen, they need to use a sprouting medium. They need to keep them wet. And if you're getting mold, right, you got to send me pictures of what kind of mold you're getting, because there's more variety of mold. But generally, if you're getting mold, you didn't properly seed, sanitize the seeds.
I think it was my last house. I think in San Diego, I got mold. I don't get mold in the desert. So in San Diego, I lived close to the ocean, so much so there was no air in the house or anything, and I would get mold. In Mexico on the ocean, I got mold. Here, I don't get mold. So I don't know, maybe I was living in a moldy environment, but here, I don't get mold here, but that used to be a problem. Like I would sprout, and as long as I harvested them, because, in 3 days you have sprouts, you know that, right?
Right.
So
yes.
Of course, No, do you know that, Doc? I don't know. But so here I don't get mold, but I'll take that in consideration. I do have a question. Is there any reason you mentioned the bleach, that you would want to use bleach over something like the hydrogen peroxide?
I mean, the research says that bleach is the most potent oxidizer for seed sterilization, sanitization. Okay. So that would be the reason. In our world, like we look at bleach as Clorox, toxic chemical. We don't want to swim in a pool with chlorine, et cetera. So there's a lot of bias against it, which would cause someone to use hydrogen peroxide, as the agent. From a level of cost, you get one little quart like this big of the food grade hydrogen peroxide, 12%, is the same price of probably 6 gallons of bleach.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that big of a difference to be able to look at that part. So that's where I'm pro food safety.
What about borax? Could people use borax or no?
I don't know. I have not used borax, other than my only memory of borax is putting it on the floor, to get rid of ants. And now, like when I see ants, I kind of collect them and move them away. So
I take borax baths and things. I'm weird. So I'll put a little borax in a bath. It's good to surface parasites and things like that, both iodine and borax. So I'm real weird like that. I would have to look into it deeper. It's not on my top of the list of known sanitizing agents. Okay. So let me ask you something else. So obviously people can live off sprouts and things of that nature. What does a typical day look like for you from the time you get up in the morning until the time you go to bed? Like, can I just get your routine as far as diet, exercise?
Sure.
What sign are you too? Because
I'm a Gemini.
I knew it. I knew you were a Gemini. I knew it. I knew you were a Gemini. Are you? You're June?
Yes, June 9.
Yeah, I knew it.
So, wow. And what's your sign?
I'm a Pisces. I'm on the cusp of Aries, but I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart. Too much, like moon, rising, like six placements. Yeah, so that's not. But I was with a Gemini for 5 years, and I recognize a Gemini when I see one. So, moving on? What is your morning routine, and what do you intake throughout the day?
So before I answer that, I just want to say to everyone here, I'm not recommending an all sprout diet.
Okay. Great.
I'm recommending that people eat as many plants as they can. Sprouts are plants, sprouts are vegetables, sprouts are good for you. So I want to put that out there.
Great.
Regarding what I eat for a day, I do a small feeding window, also known as intermittent fasting. And so I consume food between noon and 6 p.m. That is my feeding window. So after 6 p.m., I rarely eat. So everything is in that window. When I wake up, I drink water. I meditate. I'm now on like a 39-day streak. So I'm really patting myself on the back, 39 days straight of my Vipassana meditation. And then I run. I do some pull-ups. I do some sit-ups. I don't go to a gym. I do body weight exercises for resistance. And then I run. And I run between 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers. So 3 to 6 miles is my regular run. On the weekends, I might go a little bit more, maybe up to a half marathon. So that's like my part. And then, I'm active. I'm out in the field. I'm out on the ranch. I'm running around, doing things for the level. And at around 12 noon, between noon and 1, I eat fruit. So right now, as organic watermelon is becoming in season, you can get a whole organic watermelon for $8.99 in Whole Foods. I will eat a third or a half of that watermelon with joy and no guilt. I'm just eating it, my little watermelon party. And then a little bit later, maybe an hour and a half later, I'll either eat cantaloupe or honeydew. And it's hard to find them. Like the quality of fruit in some cases has gone down quite a bit. But I'll do that. And then around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll eat some sprouted garbanzo beans as a little afternoon snack, or sprouted lentils as a snack. And then moving into 5 o'clock, 5:15, I will make a big sprout salad. And if you go onto my Instagram, you'll see there'll be broccoli sprouts in it. There'll be lentil sprouts. I'll make a homemade tahini with sprouted sesame seeds. I'll make homemade sauerkraut, and we can cover how do you make sauerkraut without adding salt, using seaweed as the salt for making of the sauerkraut. So I'll make the sauerkraut, and then I'll wrap the entire thing in nori wraps, and I eat that almost every day. Like that's just my routine. And I'm 55, going on 56 in June, and I am in the best physical, mental, emotional, spiritual shape of my life. And I think a lot of it is I'm in tuned and aligned with high vibrational frequency food. And it's effortless for me to say no to anything that doesn't meet my standard or criteria for food. So I will eat fresh, ripe, raw, organic fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, seaweeds, and sprouts. And if it doesn't fit in that like category. There's like no way I'm eating it. Like there's just no way. So you're not going to see me eat bread. You're not going to see me eat any dairy products or any animal products. Like
coffee, there's no coffee, right?
No coffee, no energy drinks, like no soda. Like actually, because I'm in the desert, this is the first time in the last 5 years that I've really consumed a lot of water. Like now, because I'm in the desert, I'm very cognizant of not being dehydrated. So I'm drinking a lot of water, but that's my day in the life of Doug.
Where do you get your water from? Is it Mountain Valley spring water, or do you have a spring that you go to? Where do you?
Well, we live on a hot springs and I salinate our own water. Wow. Right. And then I add back, and this isn't a commercial, but I add back this black product, which is Volvic minerals.
Humic acid?
Yeah, this is the fulvic mineral drops. And, so I add this back to the water just so that it's not demineralized, because we're removing our water on our land is very high total dissolved solids. So we remove all that. And then I add either back this, or I'll add fresh lemon water to it, or, mix it with a green juice. But most of what I'm drinking is that. But I really like to get my water from fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. And I have to say this, you look exactly the same, if not younger, as when I walked into, I remember it was tiny, your juice bar in New York City, if not younger and better. And that I'm not going to share my age. I probably should, but I was 24, 25 then. And so it's had to have been, it's definitely been over 10, 15, it's been a long time. And I was just like, I know him, that couldn't have been him because that was so long ago, and it is you. And so that's just kind of a testimony to the way you live your life. I do have another question. Do you live a minimalistic lifestyle? We just had my friend Dan McDonald on a few weeks ago, the Life Regenerator. Remember that, Mushy? My assistant who's on here. That was fun. And he lives a very minimalistic lifestyle. He has very little things. I was actually motivated to really purge my home after I interviewed him. I'm wondering if you live simply. I know you have dogs, and that I love that. I love animals. I'm on like my 25th rescue dog. So.
Wow. So I think I live a very minimalistic, life. My wife and I, just to give you perspective, we lived in this yurt for 8 months together.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I lived in the yurt before that for years, with no running water in the yurt. So there was just basically a simple yurt, which, the ground, there's no poured concrete in the yurt, so I'm like, you talk about grounding, and in our community, people talk about grounding. Like I get up and my feet are on the ground, like on the earth. Mm. So, the idea for me is about living a life of mission and service. So, when I do work, capitalistically, it's all aligned for the mission of how I could be doing something, of meaning and purpose. So I don't have anything fancy, at all. Like everything's deliberate. This shirt is organic cotton, dyed with indigo blue. And Love so it. All of my, my shorts, I'll give you a little fashion show. My shorts are same brand. It's called Industry of All Nations. And the shorts are unbleached, undyed organic cotton.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything that's touching my body, is that. And I'll invest, and make decisions for organic sheets and the like. But, it's not perfect, right? It's not perfect because you want to get a non-down comforter. They just want to put plastic in it, right? So you have to be creative. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll just sleep with 3 or 4 organic cotton sheets and I'll get the warmth through the layering.
Yeah.
But it becomes sometimes like we get all tangled, in making that work. Andrea, it looks like we have a countdown clock going down
do.
with 1 minute left.
We do. Mushy. What do I do?
I think we just need to say a loving wind down and pick it up again sometime.
I'm so grateful for you. I've learned so much, and thank you. Thank you so much. And we will post Doug's links below where you can get his sprout book and everything else. Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you for coming on. You're amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you. Great to see you again after all this time, and keep up the great work. You are amazing, and I am grateful to have reconnected.
You motivated me. Thank you. I'm going to sprout salads. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to check out Andrea Cox's most recent 4th book, Eat Right for Your Zodiac, it's the first book to ever combine astrology with plant-based eating. Andrea's Akashic record readings, holistic wellness coaching, and intuitive life coaching services are sought out by both celebrities and ordinary, everyday people like Andrea herself. If you'd like to connect with her, you can find her at AndreaCox.com, on YouTube at both Andrea Cox TV and The Detox Intuitive, on Facebook at Andrea Lee Cox, and on Instagram at Raw Chef Andrea.